Readers Theater performances is to recognize and highlight that each culture has its history, stories, and folklore that it experiences and uses to express its sense of identity. The Readers Theater cast commemorate the Stetson Kennedy legacy through featuring Palmetto Country and the oral histories of slaves on themes such as
culture, family, and relocation,
abuse, religion, courtship, and marriage,
escape from slavery and emancipation,
life after the Civil War,
Palmetto Country and folklore,
and Black superheroes.
Young Minds Building Success Charities and the Stetson Kennedy Foundation present Stetson Kennedy Legacy Part 1, Slave Narratives and Folklore, recognizes the literature of Stetson Kennedy. This presentation looks at 2 books written by Kennedy, including The Florida Slave and Palmetto Country. Reader Theater's cast members also give life to slave interviews conducted in Florida as told by
Howard Bushell from Jacksonville, Florida.
after Christopher Goggins from Miami, Florida.
Josephine Anderson from Sanderson, Florida,
Peter Morris Cadence from Jacksonville, Florida.
Mary Miles Biddle from Eatonville, Florida, and Stephen Harville from Tampa. He used to live on a slave plantation in Gainesville, Florida.
Then there's Margaret Nicholson. She's also from Jacksonville, Florida, and she lived on a slave plantation in Tallahassee, Florida. And then there's Louis Napoleon from St. Augustine, Florida. She lived on a slave plantation in Tallahassee, Florida.
Waking Up in Balootahatchee.
No more, my Lord, but I'll never turn back. No more.
Follow, drink and go. Follow, drink and go. For the old man's waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drink and go.
Now the
Riverbank will make a mighty good road. The dead trees will show you the way. Left foot, peg foot, traveling on. Follow the drink and go. Follow
the drink and go.
Follow the drink and go. For the old man's waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drink and go. Follow the drink and go. Follow
The drink and go.
Zora Neale Hurston.
Stetson Kennedy.
Now, Stetson Kennedy was born in Jacksonville, Florida in 1916. In 1935, the Federal Writers Project was created to record the oral history of ex-slaves. In 1930s, an estimated 100,000 former slaves were still alive in the United States who could describe what slavery was like from the slave's point of view. Folklorist and author Stetson Kennedy served as Director of Ethnic Studies for the Florida Division of the Federal Writers Project.
Zora Neale Hurston was a supervisor for the Negro Unit of the Florida Project. The Florida Negro Unit was located in Jacksonville at the Claire White Mission on Ashley Street.
Kennedy's book, The Florida Slave, is a collection of oral histories of ex-slaves living in Florida. The collection relates ex-slaves' hardships under the system of slavery, the abuses of their civil and human rights in the aftermath of Reconstruction, and their strength to survive and make contribution in American culture.
Smelling the air, falling asleep, waking up, there's nothing like waking up in Balootahatchee.
Later in Stetson Kennedy's life, he had a property named Baluthahatchee. And in the Native American language, that term means a place of forgiveness. And when you think about it, Baluthahatchee was also a place in some of the ex-slaves' hearts, if they could make room for it, of course. You see, some of the slaves and their descendants found a way to forgive on some level, even if it was just to provide their life, their mind, some mental peace. Forgiving the white man, forgiving themselves, even forgiving God.
Zora, working on the collection of those slave narratives was one of the most important jobs I ever did in my life.
Yeah, me too, Stetson. You know, I remember one man, and I think his name was Alfred Christopher Goddard. Yeah, he was living in Miami, Florida, and if I'm not mistaken, he was born in
Columbia, South
Carolina. Right.
And that's me, Alfred Goddard. Now, on November 24th, 1838, now I was 97 years old today. I live in Miami, Florida. Who from Miami, Florida? Now I live on Master General Wade Hampton's plantation. When I was about 3 1/2 years old, I was put on the auction block and sold. So was my mother and 148 other slaves. Now we was taken to Vicksburg, but about 3 years later, Master General Hampton, he brought us back. Master paid $1,100 for me.
My name's Martha Nicholson. And today I live in Jacksonville, Florida. And I used to live on a slave plantation in Tallahassee, Florida. Now just listen. I want to tell you all I can, but I want to tell it right. Wait now, I don't want to make no mistakes, and I don't want to lie on nobody. I ain't mad now, and tain't no use to lie. I's taking my time, and I done prayed about it, and got all that malice out of my heart. And I ain't gonna tell no lie from, and I ain't gonna tell no lie on.
The timeline for some significant early African-American events include: in 1857, the Dred Scott decision denied the basic rights of Black people. In 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves. In 1865, the 13th Amendment formally abolished slavery. In 1868, the 14th Amendment was ratified to forbid states to deny the basic rights of citizens, including ex-slaves. And in 1870, the 15th Amendment forbids states to deny voting rights to citizens, including ex-slaves.
Now my name's Louis Napoleon. I used to live on a slave plantation in Tallahassee, Florida, but now I live in St. Augustine, Florida. Now, just before the dawn of day, the slaves were woken by a loud blast from a cow horn. It was a driver, and they signaled to prepare for the fields. Those who had to go long distance to work rode in a wagon. Those working nearby, now they walked. Now they took their meals along with them and had breakfast and dinner in the field.
My name is Harriet Grisham. I was born December 6, 1838. I was a slave on a plantation in Charleston and Barnesville, South Carolina. Now, I lives in Jacksonville, Florida. Well, plantations would grow rice, corn, sugar cane, fruits, and vegetables. Even some grew tobacco. Our syrup and sugar was made grain that was carried to the neighboring mill. Candles were made in the kitchen of the big house, usually by a cook, who was helped by the other slaves. The candles was made of beeswax gathered on the plantation.
And when the cotton crops was large, the children spent their evenings picking out seeds from the cotton balls, so their parents could work constantly in the fields during the day. And once the cotton was picked and separated, it was weighed in these balances and packed tightly in what they call crocus bags, which was like burlap.
A special batch of slave women did the spinning and the weaving. Those who had been taught how to sew made most of the clothing worn by the slaves. Our shoes was made of tan, dried leather held together by brass tacks.
And we lived in these log houses, and we had these long bunks that was like alongside the cabin. And we ain't have no beds, and just these gunny sacks that was nailed to the bunks, you see? And then no slats, there was like no springs and no nothing else. Well, we had to sleep on those gunny sacks. And they had these weaving looms where they made these rugs and things, and I used to help tear the rugs and sew them and make these big balls. And then they weave those rugs, they call them rag rugs, you know? And that's what we had to cover ourselves with. We didn't have no quilts, no sheets, no nothing like that.
And we didn't have no doctors either. No, but we only had the grannies, and we mostly used Ipecac for medicine. It would help the slave to throw up and, help them with the sickness. After the war, we had medicines like castor oil and rhubarb, and calamine, and blueberries, and salts. Those we used too.
Now, after eating the evening meal, slaves gathered around a cabin to sing and moan songs with African melody. Then, to the tune of an old fiddle, they danced and danced, called the green cone dance, and cut the pigeon wing.
My name is Titus T. Bonds, and I was born in November 1846 in Clarence County, South Carolina. The day I lived in Titusville, Florida, on the Po Farm. When I was 5 or 6 years old, I was given to Master Plowden's wife, and she groomed me for the job of houseboy. And although I never had any formal education, I was quick to learn. I could tell the time of day, and I could tell one newspaper from the other. But when I was 8 years old, I learned that I had to start letting people know I learned things kind of easy. You see, one day I was riding in the ground, and I heard Mistress' daughter tell her mama that I was riding by water. And she calls me and she say,
Hey, if I ever catch you writing again, I'll have to cut off your right arm, you hear?
So after that, I stopped letting people know I was kind of smart.
Now, one day I was at the slave market and watched them barter off poor Negroes like they were dogs. Whole families sold together and some were split. Mother gone to one master and father and children gone to others. They'd bring a slave out on a platform, open his mouth and pound on his chest, make him harden his muscles so the buyer could see what he was getting. Young men was called bucks and young women called wenches. The person who offered the best price was the buyer. And they sure did get rid of some pretty guys. They always looked so shamed and pitiful on that there stand, with all them men standing there looking at them, with what they had on their minds shining in their eyes. One little gal left her mama so mourning, so pitiful, because she had to be sold. Seems like they all belonged to a family, maybe when nobody was ever sold.
Like I said, my name is Mary Midas Phillips. Today I live in Edenville, Florida. Now see, the cattle rollers were patrollers. Sometimes they's hired by the masters to help keep slaves from running away or to capture runaway slaves. Them cattle rollers would beat runaway slaves without any mercy and then send the slaves back to the plantation they run away from.
One time, my uncle, he stole some sweet taters out of the bank. He called them pot roots. Sometimes they called them blowholes. But anyways, old Master Hoover, he came along and he peeked in through the hole in the chimney wall where the stones, where they didn't fit quite right together. He stood there and he peeked and he saw my uncle eating those blowholes.
These blowhorns is mighty good eating.
Then Master, he came in with his big whip and they caught him and they tied him to a tree. And they paddled him until he blistered. And Master washed his sore back with salt water.
They used to take George Bull and beat him for nothing. They would beat him and then take him to the lake. And they put him on a log. And then just dig him deeper and deeper into the lake. But he always swam out. When they didn't do that, they would beat him until blood run out of him. And then they just throw him in the ditch, in the field, and cover him up with dirt, and then hide his head and his ears. And then they stick a stick right up on the end of his head, you know, like a grave marker. Now I was a water toter, and I would stand there and watch them do that, and then I would stand there and watch them till they walked away. And when they did, they would just go to the other rows, and then I would go back and I'd grab all the dirt off of him, and then I says, "You's all right?"
I think so. Thank you.
And then he would just brush the dirt off and get his hoe and go on back to work. And they beat him like that, and he didn't do nothing to deserve that kind of treatment.
Now the whipping was done with sticks and whips called cat o' nine tails, which means that every lick meant 9. The cat o' nine tails was a whip of 9 straps attached to a stick. The straps had holes so that everywhere the hole in the strap fell on the flesh, a blister was left.
Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want.
Now, on my plantation, the slaves went to the white folks' church on Sunday. They seated in the rear of the church. The white minister would get up and tell the slaves,
Mind your manners. You owes them your respect.
Yeah, we's just as good as they's. Only they's white and we's black.
"You better not let these white folks hear you talk like that."
Now in our church, a white preacher would come in and tell us not to steal, lie, or run away.
And be sure to get them weeds out of that cornfield. Your master will think a heap of you.
At times, meetings was held in the slave cabin, where some inspired slaves led the service.
Now, slaves were very reverent of signs and omens. Before the Civil War, there was lots and lots of acts. And everyone said that was a sign then it was war.
That's right, that's right.
The early American Negro was deeply religious and emotional in nature. This was demonstrated by fervent prayers, constant attendance at church, voodoo beliefs, and uncontrollable fear of the dark.
Now the name's Peter Motes Cass. Today I live in Jacksonville, Florida. Now one time a young man named John Barksdale fell in love with a gal named Julia. Now they used to sneak out and meet off of East 27th Street in Jacksonville. Now one night, Julia's father, old man Atkins, he caught her. He was so hot and mad the fire burnt off all his hair. He started beating his daughter with his own walking cane. The whipping was so bad that that gal had to stay in bed for several weeks. Now John Barksdale, he run off because his father was so mad. Now Julia's father said, "Now Julia, you remind me of your mother. I killed her because she was unfaithful to me. Now if I ever catch you with that no good Negro, I'm gonna kill you too."
That done, Julia got a kitchen knife and killed her father.
You killed my mama, but you never killed me.
Now death was quick. Then she stabbed herself directly in the same spot as she did her father. Now after the funeral was over, John Barksdale looked so broken-hearted.
John asked Mr. Peter, "What should I do now that my love is dead?"
Now I knows exactly how you feel, but try to forget it and buck up. Get a hard job and work your head off. Then you'll be all right. But the next day I saw John with the voodoo doctor, Doc Rufus. Now around midnight I followed John back around to the old Atkins house and to that death row. I heard him calling Julia to come back to life. Now that was a signal for me to get out of there. And run I did. I didn't even return to my home until the next morning. I stayed there long enough to pack a few belongings and I moved right on to another place.
Now, you see, the booms, they keep the haunts away. When the folks die, that old devil sometimes don't want them down there in that bad place. So he makes witches out of them and he sends them back. One thing about the witches, they gotta count everything before they can get crossings. So what you do is you put a broom across your dark nights, and the old witch has got to count every straw in that broom before she can come in.
My name is Louisa Everett, and I'm 96 years old. My husband Sam, he's 86. I think my name used to be Norfolk, Virginia, and they used to call me North. After I was freed, I changed my name to Louisa. I grew up on a plantation near Norfolk, Virginia, and today I live in Mulberry, Florida. On the plantation, more than 100 slaves were kind of randomly mated, and without any regard for any kind of family units. And if their masters thought a certain man and woman might have strong, healthy offspring, he offered for them to have relations with one another, even though they was married to other slaves.
Now, if any one of the slaves fought against it, Big Jim would make them have sexual relations right in front of him. He did the same thing. He thought a certain couple wasn't making children fast enough. He liked watching the slaves do that. He even let his friends watch. Sometimes he and his friends even made the prettiest young women have sexual relations with them too.
Sometimes They even forced the unhappy husbands and lovers to watch. Me and Sam, we was married in the same terrible way. He was forced on me, but we was a healthy pair, and we made big, fine babies. So I never had another man forced on me ever again, thank God. Sam was kind to me, and you know what? I grew to love him.
My name is Stephen Harville. I was born February 2nd, 1840, and I lived on a plantation in Gainesville, Florida. Today I live in Tampa, Florida. I was married and my wife lived near Sutton. So I could be home, I walked from Master Sloan's place, crossing the Hillsborough River by that ferry, and I carried a sack of groceries on my back. Then I would return home early the next morning in time for work. Now that round trip was more than about 30 miles, but it was worth it to spend the rest of the night at home with my wife.
After emancipation, slaves were not lawfully married. Orders were given that if they wanted to live together as husband and wife, they had to marry according to the law. They were given 9 months to decide. If they kept living together without being legally married, they would be arrested for adultery.
Mr. Fryer was a justice of the peace for Gainesville. He was assigned to marry the slaves on the plantation where I lived.
One time, one of Master Stokes' slaves ran away. He sent the Negro dogs to catch him. Negro dogs was the dogs that went after runaway slaves. Now this slave had a head start on them dogs trailing. He hid around some floating logs in a large pond. The dogs trailed him in the pond and started howling, which means they's getting close to they's prey.
But days disappeared. The next scene of them was their dead bodies floating up on the water of the pond. They had been killed by the slaves.
Now there were about 50 full-blood-hounded hounds who were used to find them escaped slaves. The slave escaped and was never seen again. Now I just don't understand how that slave could stand the icy waters of that pond, but evidently he did.
And a heap of the slaves, they would run away and hide in the woods. But the white folks would catch them, and they put this chain around their neck, and it would hang down their back, and it'd be fastened around their waist and then around their feet, so they couldn't run.
Now for me, I was 19 when I ran away with my brother to Lake City. Many times we hid in the trees and groves from the posse that was looking for us. At night I would cover up my face and body with that Spanish moss, and I would sleep. And then one night I hid in a tree near a creek, and I accidentally overslept. Now in the morning, a group of white women fishing near the creek, now they saw me. And they ran to tell the men, but I escaped. Now after 4 days of weary traveling, guided by the North Star and the instinct inherited by my Indian grandmother, I finally reached Lake City. Now after seeing all those wounded colored soldiers, I didn't want to stay, so I stole on the way to Tallahassee.
At one time, the Yankees were upon us. But before they got there, our missus told her slaves what to say.
Okay. Now you beg for us. You can save our lives. If they ask you if we were good to you, you tell them yes. And if they ask you if we gave you meat, now you tell them yes.
Now the rest of them, they didn't get no meat. And me, see, I worked in the house, so I didn't tell no lie. I did get some meat, but the rest didn't get no meat. So anyways, we begged for our missus, lives and we saves a lot.
Union soldiers visit my plantation. Slaves were going about their work like nothing unusual happened. The slaves were summoned from the fields to give their message of their freedom. My mistress was scared, but she woke upright with a tight trembling lip between her teeth. We waited as we listened to the last horn that summoned several generations of human chattel to and from work.
A horn was used to call slaves to work, and it was used to call slaves out to the field. Also, in chattel slavery, people were treated as the chattel, or personal property of an owner, and they were brought and sold as if they were commodities.
Some left the plantation. Others stayed to harvest the crops. But they all remember to thank God for their freedom. They immediately started holding meetings and singing soul-stirring spiritual songs.
Thank you, Master Jesus, thank you. Thank you, Master Jesus, thank you. Thank you, Master Jesus, thank you. Heaven gonna be my home. No slavery chains to tie me down, and no more drivers gonna blow for me. No more stock to fasten me down. Jesus, break slavery chain, Lord. Break slavery chain, Lord. Break slavery chain, Lord. Heaven gonna be my home. Thank you, Master Jesus, thank you.
Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Master Jesus, thank you. Come on. Thank you, Master Jesus, thank you.
Hallelujah.
Heaven's gonna be my home.
Now, the greatest event in the life of a slave and the most sorrowful in the life of a master was about to happen. My pappy told me, Mary, freedom is at hand. We saw a Negro coming in the distance, mounted on a mule. And he went to Master Jameson, who stood on the porch. The traveler told Master about the liberation of the slaves. Boy, Master Jameson had never before been heard to curse. But this was one day he let go some words that are unworthy to repeat. Then he broke down and he cried. He cried like a slave who was being lashed by his cruel master.
I ain't got no more to do with you. You's free. If you want to stay with me, you can. I'll give you 1/3 of what you read.
My mammy and pappy decided to stay. But when the crops was harvested, Master didn't do what he promised. He didn't give us nothing. So I slipped away on the mule and galloped to Newmansville. And I told one of the Union captains what Master did. That Union captain gave me a letter from Master Jameson saying,
If you don't give Mary's family what you promised, I'm gonna put you in jail.
almost immediately, old Master did just what those orders told him to do. After that, me and my family left Master Jameson to live somewhere else.
Now, Daddy mentioned was one of the black superheroes. You see, the American slaves had superheroes. Daddy mentioned was a Negro convict who could outrun the longest shotgun. They had him locked up for vagrancy. He tried to tell him that he'd be glad to work if only he could find a job. But you know, a colored man can't say much in Hope County. They gave Daddy Mention 90 days in Lakeland jail. And Daddy mentioned he set his mind on escaping to Tampa, but they sooner shoot you than go to all the trouble of trying to catch you. Even if you got away, the hounds would catch up with you before you could even get to Moore.
Daddy Mention knew he had to have a better plan. He decided to chop a tree down all by himself. And it didn't take but one more man to help him tote it to the pile. Then one day, when he was sure Captain was watching him, he picked up a tree all by himself and carried it all the way to the pile before he put it down. Captain couldn't hardly believe his own eyes. And then Captain called the other guards to see Daddy do that again.
It got to be a regular sign to see Daddy Mention walking around a jail yard carrying a big old tree in his arms. Everybody was used to seeing it by then, and that was just what Daddy Mention wanted. After supper, most of the captains and guards were around the yard, and they watched while Daddy was picking up that big old log. He started walking toward the gate with the log on his shoulder, and none of the guards didn't even bother him, because they never thought a man would even try to escape with no log on his shoulder.
You know, you had to pass the guards' quarters before you get to the gate. But Daddy Mention didn't even turn around when he passed.
No, you didn't.
The guards at the gate must have thought one of the captains had sent Daddy to take the log somewhere or was making a bet or something. Right on out that gate, Daddy Mention went with the log on his shoulder, heading for town.
Now, I just kept that log on my shoulder, and everybody I passed just thought it must have fallen off a truck. And I was carrying it back. They knew nobody would have the nerve to steal a good old pine log like that and walk along the highway with it. Soon as I got to Plant City, I took that log to a wood yard and I sold it. Then I had me enough money to ride on to town. And I tell you what, ain't nobody ever gonna catch me in Polk County no more. Follow, drink and go. Follow, drink and go. For the old man's waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drink and go. Now the riverbank will make a mighty good road. The dead trees will show you the way. Left foot, right foot, traveling on. Follow the drink and go. Follow the drink and go. Follow the drink and go. For the old man's waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drink and go.
Thank you.
All right.